Plan Associates is a full-service engineering, planning, architecture, and surveying firm. We have over 100 professionals on staff, including architects, surveyors, environmental scientists, civil engineers, and mechanical, electrical, and plumbing engineers. We were founded in 1965, and our core market is K-12 educational design. We have done thousands of educational projects ranging from ground up school design and major referendum to additions, renovations, athletic fields, and capital improvements. Our design team has vast knowledge of the specialized spaces and facility systems that make up a modern school, and they understand how educational architecture and engineering can impact curriculum, performance, and the mental and physical health of students. It has long been known that a connection to nature can reduce stress and improve concentration. Land aims to incorporate design elements that take advantage of this concept, such as natural light, outdoor learning spaces, and abundant greenery indoors. This long term trend in educational design was brought to the forefront of the conversation surrounding school design when the pandemic hit in 2020. But as the concerns of COVID-19 subsided, the renewed interest in embracing nature in school design remained. I'm Jen Menino, Assistant Vice President and Head of Land's Marketing Department. Today, I have the pleasure of talking with one of our K-12 design experts on incorporating nature and biophilic design into schools. Matt Fink, Senior Associate and Architect at Land. Welcome.
Thanks, Jen. Happy to join this conversation today as we dive into biophilic design. We've worked with a variety of school districts over the years who are aiming to create more spaces that are centered around well-being, that center around stress reduction. And through those different designs, we've really found a natural fit with biophilia and providing different elements for the students, for the staff to create this home away from home. So eager to dive into this conversation, to have this chat back and forth of how we can bring this design to the forefront, but also the why and the reasoning why this is so successful.
Thanks, Matt. And let's just jump into it. We have a bunch of questions that will focus on nature and just biophilic design and your role as an architect in supporting our clients and communities. So, since COVID has hit, how have you seen school design shift over most recent years?
So since the pandemic, obviously there were a lot of districts who focused on the outside environment more than the in. There were obviously health concerns about packing so many people into a room, which pushed everybody outside, which was a great effort, which was really bringing back the whole trend of biophilic design and really changing the way people looked at a classroom. Now, while being outside is great and provides some new lesson plans, there are really some interesting ways to incorporate biophilic design into the overall school or the overall process. I think throughout our conversation today, we'll dive into what this whole trend or mindset is. That it's not really just bringing the out people bring the inside out or the outside in, or making sure everybody stands amongst the trees. It's by creating well-designed spaces that create environments for learning, for well-being, and for mental stimulation.
Sure. So, let's start with this. What is biophilic design?
Biophilic design isn't a trend. It's a design style, it's a mantra, it's a goal for overall design. As stated before, it's not bringing the outside in or bringing the inside out. It's about creating a true environment. That we're trying to create spaces that blend not only the natural habitat and good design ideas, but trying to make them more of a personal environment, something that is warm, welcoming, and really lets in a variety of different components that will improve the overall well-being of a student and or inhabitant. Recently, we were fortunate enough to work with the Riverdale School District at a large addition for their Holdren Middle School. And during that design process, we looked at how we can incorporate wellness and biophilic design. We came up with 8 different points during this whole process, such as natural spaces, material warmth, personal and positive experiences, and an environment that's safe and secure. Then on the opposite side for the educational component, we wanted to make sure there was a connection to nature, that we promoted social and emotional health, stimulated both the body and the mind, and provided stress reducing environments. All these ideas really intertwine with the mindset and the goals of biophilic design, much more than putting a plant in the corner or making sure we have some green elements. But again, trying to create that living, learning environment.
Sure. And all of those design principles are positively affecting students and the staff, right?
Indeed, there's actually been a number of studies, and this goes into ACE scores, which are adverse childhood experiences, that the more biophilic elements, the better the overall environment for the student, the better their outcome on not only their tests, but also at their personal life and experiences with other people. There are some stats that we can dive into at enough time that actually saw the overall improvement of the student as a whole, again, not just from a testing perspective, but when exposed to these different environmental elements.
So I feel like we hit on why is this so important about having a connection to nature, right? And how biophilic design is positively affecting students and our staff. Is there anything else you'd want to add on that?
There's a few other tidbits that the biophilic design trend isn't anything new. It's actually been a counterpoint to many things that we've seen in recent history. And by recent history, I mean the past 200 to 300 years. Much like how schools themselves are changing, it's a reaction to the Industrial Revolution of sorts. That for many years, the schools were based off the industrial design system. That you bring kids in, you make sure they remember and learn what they need to, and then push them out along the way. We've realized that that's not how we nurture the child. We nurture the overall well-being, and that's a very different attitude of sorts. So instead of putting them in an environment that is very sterile, that is very blank, and having them, go through rote memorization, biophilic design really tries to change that environment into something that is again more natural. And I mean more natural as in, does connect to nature, but is a natural environment for students, for humans. It is a safe space. It is a warm space. It is a space that connects with others and other living beings. And we're trying to create something that is, again, more appropriate to a learning environment than just a factory for learning. So with that, people actually started to examine, the both working and learning environments. It's kind of the same thing. That we've created these, habitation zones. And for the most part, they've been four walls, a bright white ceiling, and they've been, a place where you get a task done. Well, yes, we are getting that task done, whether it be learning, whether it be taking a test, listening to your professors, to your classmates, to your teachers, or just from a general work environment. We have gone from A to B. But is there more that we should be doing from there? Which brings in the whole idea of biophilic design, that we should be creating true environments, true habitats. Now, I'm saying environments and habitats. I'm not saying let's all go sit outside. Let's make sure we're exposed to all the elements. But how do we create a space that is all about well being that makes people feel at home? Now, there's a number of trends that we brought up, such as bringing in natural light. This one should be pretty obvious, but there have been some studies along the way that with more natural light within a learning environment, the better the outcome and performance of the students. At the same time, I think we've all had those stressful days where we can really use a breath of fresh air. And we use that as a fun little factoid. But when you open up a window and let fresh air in, there is this refreshing moment, which has again gone into the educational environment. We can take this further by saying that the spaces we design should have spaces of retreat, spaces of group learning, spaces for overall collaboration, much like any natural human habitat, that we're not confined to a desk, but we're interacting as a large group in spaces that make us feel comfortable. In a sense, we are trying to create the perfect habitat for students and for teachers.
And these are shifts in K to 12 school design that we've seen over years. I mean, I think you hit
Correct.
on this earlier. Biophilic design isn't something that's new. I think it's more prevalent than ever since COVID, right? It's
Agreed.
it's a lot of these trends of bringing natural light, bringing in fresh air where possible and clean air through HVAC systems and upgrades
Mhm.
and these flex learning spaces. I think it's more of a focus at the forefront of districts' wants and needs than ever before. The other thing I was going to say just on top of that, I wouldn't call this a trend in K to 12 school design. Would you?
I wouldn't call it a trend either. That we say it's a trend just because it's picking up momentum as we speak, but it has been the forefront of design, just not as obvious. Like you said before, it's about bringing in fresh air, it's about bringing in daylight, but we're really trying to expand upon that. How do we connect the body and mind through what we're trying to do? So by creating spaces that kind of blur the boundary, it gets our brain moving in new ways, especially as we shift from, cold, and I mean cold in a, not so fun and exciting sense, interior spaces into warmer, more engaging spaces. It helps, create those stimuli of sorts. So we can really excel in the different things that we're trying to do.
Matt, can you give me some examples of design principles that you incorporate into spaces of, say, color or indoor biophilic design, these flex learning spaces? How do you build these into budgets?
So I think looking at budgets, looking at the overall space, the first and most important thing is good design is good design. That if the space is designed well, it's made, for the people, sometimes even by the people, getting their thoughts and insight along the way, but making sure that it really understands and promotes their mindset. So, again, turning back to Rivervale and the whole Drum Edition, we spoke to the district on the overall need for wellness throughout the school. Again, engaging biophilic design, we brought in natural elements like woods with very warm tones throughout the flooring, bringing in biophilic or green walls into different spaces that as we started to pull away from glazed spaces and with a direct view outside, how do we provide that sense of an environment to the indoor area? We did that for green walls.
Matt, by green walls, you don't mean physical green walls, right?
So when we talk about green walls, we talk about it in two different senses. One from color theory, that we did provide literal green walls, as in different hues of green, but we also brought in living walls, green from the sense of an eco-friendly mindset. While in this school, they were a faux plant just to help with maintenance concerns. The idea was how do we bring the outside in and make sure people connect to an environment or find a more nurturing environment within corridor, for example.
And I think that's so important too, because access to outdoors isn't year long, it's seasonal.
I think there's a good point there that, in these cold New Jersey winters, we know that we can't go outside all the time. So again,
Mhm.
knowing that biophilic design isn't let's race outside, it's how do we find a warm environment no matter where we are. By bringing in these plant elements into the interior environment, it shows that you want to be here. You want to be engaged in the overall space. Why? Because things are alive, things are growing, and you can really interact with them versus the, snowy grounds and the freezing cold temperatures. You found this little space that you can call your own, where you can meet with your classmates, you can meet with your teachers, work together in a space where you just feel comfortable.
How would you get started with incorporating a biophilic design into a new space for a school district that's interested?
So, with the district we've worked with, we've had the pleasure of working with many who are really up to speed and actually were on the forefront of this design. At the same time, we've worked with others, and we have to really introduce them into the whole mindset. Some of the first ways we've done this is just through anecdotes of sorts that we talk to them and say, hey, if you're having a stressful day, what do you guys do? Some people retreat to a cozy spot, some people go for a walk. And well, why aren't we incorporating those into the learning environment? That there are some tough days out there as a child. So why aren't we creating this special space that has those abilities versus their assigned desk and chair? Why don't we have a space that is a little bit more open, that is a little bit more passive of sorts, so that we can gain the benefits from the natural environment? Following that, we've done some great presentations that actually start to bring in some of the different objectives, some of the different goals, some of the different patterns of biophilic design, so we can kind of hit home a little bit further with that. There have been some great studies. I'll shout out to Terrapin Bright Green, who have 14 patterns of biophilic design, going over all of the benefits of just simple elements. For example, they've talked about something like a visual connection to nature, which many people are doing now through their courtyards, through their outdoor environments. But I don't think many understand how quick of a response or what it can actually do to the human body. Through their research, they've seen that it's lowered blood pressure and heart rate, it's improved mental engagement and attentiveness, and then positively impacted attitude and overall happiness. And this is just by looking outside. But I think we can all say the same thing that for those of us who are stuck in an office chair all day, after staring at a screen for hours on end, what's the easiest way to re-engage and to reconnect or get that break? Turning around and just soaking in what's going on in the world around you versus being so funneled into one tiny little space.
I can agree with you on that. I mean, as someone who sits at a desk all day and stares at a screen, it is helpful to step away and take a short walk outside or get some fresh air to re-engage yourself to come back motivated and more focused. When designing for biophilic design, how much green is too much? Where do we draw the line?
I think that's a great question. That there are definitely two extremes to this. That biophilic design is not having your one potted plant in the corner like we've seen in every bank. At the same time, it's not putting kids into a jungle. So, as stated before, good design is good design. It's having the appropriate touch. of making sure that the different design elements all kind of resonate with each other, that the floors coordinate with walls, the ceilings work with the space as well, that it's not let's have green overflow from top to bottom. And many spaces we actually haven't used pure green. We've used elements that feel natural when it comes down to the fabrics of the furniture, where it comes to the treatment of the lighting, or things like that. We've used a variety of color and patterns to bring that material warmth, but without going into the dense jungle of an overall learning environment.
How does climate and location, size of the space, how does all of that play a role into what you're considering with design?
So if we're looking from an overall climate standpoint and literal climate standpoint, for the clients we're servicing, they're all in the same area. That we go from, Delaware up to northern New York, where we're all experiencing the same things. But if we talk about school by school, they have their own climate, they have their own individuality, they have their own look and feel. So a big part of our design, biophilic design, providing something appropriate for the district is understanding who they are, what makes them special, and what their different needs are. As for the size of the space, we've worked from anything from 400 square feet up to 3,000 square feet for just a room, but we've done even bigger than that. Again, it's those appropriate touches, whether it be ways to, have this material connection to nature, whether it be dynamic and diffused light, or even airflow and things like that. We've even looked at ways of wayfinding as a way to connect with the overall environment, down to graphics and branding, things that have been biophilic, where we have brought in the actual plants and natural elements, or things that worked with the overall look and feel of the school to make sure that we have a connected space, so students feel like they're somewhere special and somewhere that is designed just for them.
We've seen underutilized space being renovated. We've seen additions being added on. How about when we consider physical outdoor spaces, courtyards, again being something on the newer side of K to 12 design? How are we finding space to incorporate courtyards into appropriate locations at schools?
So I think for every school that's ever been designed, there has been an underutilized outdoor area. I think growing up, we can all picture that asphalt walkway with all the weeds growing through it, and how we all longed to be out there, but it just wasn't right just yet. Again, thanks to the pandemic, and not to harp on that, we've started to look at those spaces for a second time and how we can improve them, to really get people where they want to go. So in many districts, we've used these courtyards, we've used outdoor spaces in connection with our civil site and landscape teams, to create a very unique environment, something that is still safe, as that is one of the number one concerns, that once you leave the envelope of the building, it's still protected, but at the same time, something that isn't distracting and is still focused. So we found unique ways, whether through amphitheaters, through living, growing gardens. We've actually come up with some scenarios where they can be used for outdoor presentations and community events, but finding a way to weave them into the overall landscape of the school. That way, we have varied learning spaces for different individuals and different learning styles.
I think it's so neat that these aren't just outdoor courtyards. You hit on this, but they're also learning areas. They're new classroom spaces that are outdoors. It's curved, tiered seating. There's canopy shading structures. There's garden spaces for science classes. I mean, the gamut of things that we're incorporating for these schools, it's impressive. I think it's really impressive, and it's a great shift in what we're seeing and providing our communities here.
So I think what's nice is with these outdoor learning spaces, they can really be used for any subject matter. They can also let subject matters kind of blend. Some of the best anecdotes that have been shared with me is, for art classes, where else can you find better colors than going outside four walls? Or science, let's learn from real life. Or some of my favorites are, shooting rockets in the middle of the courtyard just to learn about gravity and other forces. So by bringing that experience into a new environment, one that differs from your current four walls, makes a memorable moment, makes lessons stick a bit more, and also provides this new opportunity for things to be viewed in a different mindset. That if it's not just staring just directly forward and focusing on a lesson, but it's true, hands-on, or interactive in a sense, it really just drives the message home and allows kids to explore a little bit further.
And I think it's safe to say we know from feedback in incorporating these spaces that these pointed design choices really do foster wellness in students.
We've been fortunate enough to do a series of post-occupancy examinations, with the different districts we've worked with, asking them what was great, and what didn't work out the way they thought it would. We've also tested them to see how students have performed both before and after, again, from a test standpoint, but also from a personal standpoint. And in doing so, we've seen a positive outcome along the way in all these both major and minor changes to the overall school, all focused on the improvement of the student and their day-to-day experience.
I think some of the just final closing questions that I have for you, we hit on so many different components of design and what that looks like, renovating spaces or bringing in new construction or additions. How do we find school leadership more willing to put money into these type of projects?
From a budget standpoint, a lot of this stuff is becoming, I don't want to say common, but interlaced in what we do on a daily basis. That we have talked a lot about indoor air quality. Code has been marching forward to make this at its forefront. That back in the day, it was a prerequisite for lead. We're past that point now. It is a standard. It is no longer a lead checkpoint or prerequisite. It is the standard to have some of these high functioning systems to promote indoor air quality. At the same time, when we talk about even the finishes of a space, it's become part of land's design process to always, leave a space better than what it was, but to leave a space that is engaging, that is welcoming, that is a home. So it doesn't really change a budget that drastically to incorporate these different ideas and patterns. It becomes part of the dialogue between ourselves and the district of what they're passionate about, what we can do to improve their spaces, and at the end, provide a successful space for every inhabitant.
Would you add on top of that that there's a shift in curriculum nowadays as well? So it's finding ways to revitalize spaces within schools to meet the current needs of today's curriculum?
I think we've seen a burst of creativity from the teaching staff within every district we've worked with. They come with so many bright ideas to say, "Hey, I'd love to do this. I'd love to see this. I wish my students had this." Well, thankfully, we're the right people to talk to because we take those, once intangible ideas into something physical. So we have seen this great shift of how can we use these spaces differently? How can we really make them our own? How can we personalize them? I think every successful space comes from that personalization, from that dialogue, and trying to make something greater.
I'm happy to have been able to sit down and chat with you just a little bit further on what biophilic design is and how that really influences performance of students and staff, our communities, schools in general. LAN is fortunate to service many districts throughout the tri-state area. And being someone who's a part of the process and supporting LAN's design services, it's very enlightening and motivating to see the end results. And for yourself as an architect, being someone who's designing these spaces, do you have any closing remarks that you want to add? What keeps you motivated?
There's nothing better than when the teachers or students come back and say, "Man, I love this space. We've really enjoyed it. It's really transformed how we look at the school." And we've been fortunate to have that in a variety of markets. So a lot of these are really passion projects for us that we want to find ways to make an impact, to make lives better. And by doing such simple gestures as, incorporating biophilic design, by incorporating natural elements, by, providing different visual and non-visual connections or even different natures of the space, we get to have fun with what we do, and to see it all the way through to the end is always outstanding just to see how people interact with it.